Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, your guide from the dark side, Dawson Richard. And how are you all doing on this lovely Thursday evening? Because I can assure you all, I'm doing great. I just got done looking at all of the feedback from the pilot episode, and I am super pumped about everything that you guys said. It was a great pilot. I want to thank everybody who showed their support and appreciation for this project. You know who you are, and you have my utmost appreciation. So let's jump right into episode 2 of season 1. As always, be advised that a majority of this content will be explicit and gruesome at times, so if you're squeamish around gore, murder, and other heinous acts of violence, please back out now, especially with today's tragic and terrifying episode. Today, we will be looking at the exorcism of Annelise Michel. Yeah, so fucking terrifying, right? So just all I'm going to tell you about that is that noise came out of a human being, and that I'm going to cover what that noise is later on in the story. So if that sound freaked you out at all, it's best that you just call it quits, because there's a lot of them. Also, some fun facts about the case is that it went on to inspire not one, but 3 horror movies. And if you've ever seen an Exorcism movie, there's a good chance that it drew some inspiration from the real-life events of Annelise Michel. So, without further ado, let's get right into today's story. Annelise Michel was born on the 21st of September in 1952 in Bavaria, a landlocked federal state of Germany. She was raised in a Catholic household by her parents Josef and Anna, and had 3 sisters. Annelise Michel was extremely religious. She prayed frequently and would attend Mass twice a week. She was also described by classmates as being withdrawn and religious, but also sweet and friendly. In the year 1969, when Annelise was only 17 years old and still in high school, she suffered a severe convulsion. Over the years, she had 2 more episodes and was finally diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, which causes seizures, loss of memory, and audio and visual hallucinations. She also began to suffer from severe depression and was put on medication not only for her convulsions, but also chlorpromazine, which is an antipsychotic. In 1973, she enrolled in the University of Würzburg and began to report many strange occurrences. She described seeing devil faces throughout her day, knocking sounds coming from her bedroom, and voices telling her frequently that she was damned and would rot in hell. Her mother even reported walking in to her daughter staring at a statue of the Virgin Mary, with eyes turned black. So this is where things really start to get weird. During a pilgrimage to San Damiano, Annelise had an escort who was a family friend. This family friend claimed that Annelise was a victim of demonic possession. She stated that Annelise would avoid the crucifix. She tried at one point to get her to drink water from a holy spring, but she refused to drink it, saying that it would burn her throat. She also could not walk on the soil on holy ground, as she said it burned her feet like fire. When Annelise observed the people who were praying in one of the gardens, she said they appeared to be gnashing their teeth. She also refused to enter the shrine and said that pictures and medals of the saints shined too brightly to look at. It was by this point both Annelise and her family became increasingly frustrated with the medical treatments, and her family became persistent. They once again visited the neurologist who diagnosed young Annelise, and they claimed that he advised them to see a Jesuit, or like a religious official, so like a priest or like a bishop. The neurologist denied this claim, which, I mean, I would too. Like, you can't be like a doctor and like being like, hey, I can't help you here. Go see Jesus. Like, that's just really poor doctoring on his part. Interestingly enough, though, most of the clergy that they consulted told the family to seek medical help. Oh, it's bad that the priests are the ones giving the proper medical advice to this family. Anyway, so the priests also said that they would need the permission of a bishop to undergo an exorcism anyway. But a priest by the name of Ernst Alt believed fully that Annelise Michel was under the influence of demonic possession. And I mean, he did have some pretty convincing evidence. At this point, Annelise's behavior had become extreme. She was reported crawling around on the floor, barking like a dog for 2 days. She would eat spiders and coal. She broke crucifixes and crosses that were in her presence. She licked her own urine off the floor. Ugh. threw her sister across the room with strength that was described as being superhuman, and bit the head off of a bird. Holy shit. So Father Alt came to check on Annelise regularly and reported that she didn't look like an epileptic, which I don't know what that means. Is there like an appearance for people who are epileptic? Like, I don't know if there's like a way that you can look epileptic, but. So Father Alt urged the local bishop, Joseph Stangl, to allow for an exorcism. In a letter to Father Alt, Annelise wrote, "I am nothing. Everything about me is vanity. What should I do? I have to improve. You pray for me." And she also once told him, "I want to suffer for other people, but this is so cruel." Which, jeez, that breaks my heart. Like, she's just like a girl, and like, I'll go more into like my thoughts on it later, but it's just sad. So finally, during the September of 1975, Bishop Stangl gave permission for an exorcism on the poor Annelise Michel. He enlisted another pastor, Father Arnold Renz, to perform the exorcism. However, the bishop said that it must be done in complete secret. That's shady as fuck. I don't care who you are. That's just, no. Nothing good comes out of, yeah, you can do it, but just keep it on the DL. Like, ugh. Also, a little backstory on exorcisms, just because I find this kind of stuff interesting. It's been used by tons of other cultures and religions, not just the Catholic Church, but it was popularized by the Catholic Church in the 1500s. Priests would use the phrase "Vade retro Satana" in their exorcisms, which translates to "Go back, Satan." The practice is recorded in the Ritual Romanum, a book composed in the 16th century. And, of course, by the 1960s, exorcism was pretty rare, but because of books like The Exorcism, this practice resurged a lot in the 1970s and may have been kind of a hindrance to poor Annelise here. So Father Renz performed his first exorcism on the 24th of September in 1975. He also allowed for the recording of these sessions through audio. In total, there are 42 audio recordings. These tapes are disturbing and are just downright terrifying. I'm going to play some for you now and translate them afterwards, but just be advised.
Ich spreche dazu, dass ich in dem Wald rein bin. Ich trag dir die Rotznase noch so lang, bis es lebt wird. Ist auch blöde Weib. Für uns geht's kein Zurück. Nee! In alle Ewigkeit!
No. It's so fucking creepy, and like, I've heard it a bunch of times, but it's still just fucking scary, man. It's just terrifying stuff. So what was said just then is the priest asked what the demons were doing inside of Annelise, why they were there, and the demons basically were saying, like, we're not gonna give her up, we're gonna stay here until she dies, this dumbass bitch, literally what was said, and it's just fucking creepy stuff. So, let's listen to the next one.
Sag mir den Namen. Ich, der Judas, und der Nero, der Kain und der Hitler. Fünfstimme. Das ist der sechste? Oh, den haben wir gelogen. Den habt ihr dazu gelogen.
So with this segment, Father Renz is asking Annelise, or I guess he's like asking the demons. I don't know how this works. He's asking the demons who all is possessing the body of Annelise. And the demons are like naming themselves off, or like Annelise is saying their names, because Annelise claimed that she was haunted by multiple demons, not just one. So the demons are just like naming themselves off, and you can kind of hear that because she's just saying names. But the demons that Annelise claimed to be possessed by were Judas, Nero, Cain, Hitler, and Lucifer. And for people in the audience who aren't, well versed in biblical scripture, which, I mean, I'm not either. I'm no expert, but I did some research. Nero was a Roman emperor who was prosecuted many Christians. Judas was obviously the apostle that betrayed Jesus and the betrayer. And Cain is the son of Adam and Eve who killed his brother Abel. And then obviously Lucifer and Hitler. So just some really just nasty folks. There are many other recordings that Father Renz made of Annelise, but a lot of these are just them talking about the corruption of the Catholic Church and the power that Rosary has over demons. So if you all would like to listen to those, I'll leave the link in the description to some videos that I found of longer recordings. So you can listen to those on your own time if you'd like, because I've covered enough of this and heard enough of the recordings. Like, I'm sitting in my house alone. My wife's at like classes and stuff, and I'm I'm sitting here listening to these recordings, and it was fine at first, but then shit started happening around my house. Like bags with bottles in them started tipping over, and like I kept hearing like creaking noises coming from the kitchen, and I was like, "Fuck this!" Like, I'm not about to bring some demonic presence on my house just for a fucking podcast. So yeah, if you want to listen to those on your own time, my tangent's over. Back to the story. So along with the main 5 demons that Annelise was claiming to be possessed by, another name that constantly popped up was Fleischmann, which the priests looked into and found was an excommunicated priest in the 1500s, and Annelise gave an accurate description of him to the priests, who said that she would have no way of knowing about him, which is like so weird because she would also have conversations between the demons. Like at one point, Hitler was saying that people are stupid as pigs and they think it's all over after death, and it goes on, and then she would assume the role of Judas, saying that Hitler was nothing but a big mouth and he had no real say in hell. So as the exorcisms continued, Annelise's condition began to worsen. She had to be tied down and restrained by her mother and the priests during the exorcisms because of how much she would fight and thrash. She also began to bang her head against walls and bite herself and others. She wouldn't eat, as she described herself as not being permitted to eat. And this one, which in my mind is just the most gruesome and is just terrible, she broke the bones and ripped the tendons in her knees from kneeling in prayer so much. At this time, Annelise talked about how she would die to atone for the wayward youth of the day and the apostate priests of the modern church. So it's at this point that she's convinced herself. She's too far gone, and she just really is just believing that everything that is happening to her is 100% real, that there's no way that it can be false. On the day of the final exorcism, June 30th, 1976, Annelise was no longer screaming, but was only uttering one phrase: "Please, absolution." The next morning, she was found dead. Autopsy ruled that her cause of death was due to malnourishment and dehydration. And over those grueling 10 months, Alt and Renz performed 67 exorcisms, each lasting up to 4 hours. Annelise weighed 68 pounds and was only 23 when she died. After her death, Annelise's story became a national sensation, which, understandably so. After an investigation, the state prosecutor maintained that Michel's death could have been prevented even 1 week before she died had she simply been force-fed. In 1976, the state charged Michel's parents and the priests with negligent homicide. The parents were defended by Erich Schmidt-Leichner. Their lawyers were sponsored by the church, go figure, and the state recommended that no involved parties be jailed. Instead, the recommended sentence for the priests was a fine. Fuck that. While the prosecution concluded that the parents should be exempt from punishment as they had suffered enough. The trial started on the 30th of March 1978 in the district court and drew intense interest. Before the court, doctors testified that Michel was not possessed, stating that this was a psychological effect because of her strict religious upbringing and her epilepsy. But the doctor, Richard Roth, who was asked for medical help by Alt, allegedly told her during the exorcism that there is no injection against the devil, Annelise, which is so fucked up. Basically, in case you don't know what like he's saying there because he worded it weird, he's basically saying there's no shots against the devil, or like there's no vaccines for possession. Like that's so fucked up to say as a doctor. Like, fuck that guy. Schmidt-Leichner, who was the parents' lawyer, said that the exorcism was legal and that the German Constitution protected citizens in the unrestricted exercise of their religious beliefs. The defense played tapes recorded at the exorcism sessions, sometimes featuring what was claimed to be demons arguing or overlapping voices, to assert their claim that Michel was indeed possessed. They further said that she was finally freed because of the exorcism just before her death. That's messed up, but there is some claim to what they were saying. If you listen to one of the tapes, there is a part where Annelise is making that weird growling noise she makes, but while that noise is going on, she also starts yelling no, which is weird because you can't growl and speak at the same time. So that's what they mean when they say the overlapping voices. I listen to it. It's pretty creepy. It's pretty crazy. If you're interested, go check it out. So that's basically their defense. And one other point that kind of helped the defense was that there was a surprising lack of ulcers on Annalise's body, which is something you get during dehydration and malnutrition. So that's something that helped the defense. A big controversy that came about with the trial was whether or not the family and priests should have taken Annelise to seek medical treatment in the later stages, even though Annelise consistently begged not to have medical treatment. So this became a big argument as to whether or not she was in a rational state of mind where she could make her own decisions, and they should have taken her, but the defense said that they couldn't because it wasn't her decision. They couldn't force her to go seek medical help. So it's just one big mess. The bishop who ordained the whole thing actually said that he was not aware of her alarming medical condition when he approved of the exorcism and did not testify. Asshole. Anyway, the accused were found guilty of manslaughter resulting from negligence and were sentenced to 6 months in jail, which was later suspended, and 3 years of probation. It was a far lighter sentence than anticipated, but was more than requested by the prosecution, who had asked that the priests only be fined and that the parents be found guilty but not punished. The church approving such an old-fashioned exorcism rite drew public and media attention. According to John M. Duffy, the case was a misidentification of mental illness. So after the trial, the parents asked the authorities for permission to exhume the remains of their daughter. The official reason presented by the parents to authorities was that Michel had been buried in undue hurry in a cheap coffin. Almost 2 years after the burial, on the 25th of February 1978, her remains were replaced in a new oak coffin lined with tin. The official reports state that the body bore the signs of consistent deterioration. The accused exorcists were discouraged from seeing the remains of Michel. Arnold Renz later stated that he had been prevented from entering the mortuary. On a lighter note, the grave of Annelise Michel became and still remains today a pilgrimage site for many Catholics. The number of officially sanctioned exorcisms decreased in Germany after the case, in spite of Pope Benedict XVI's support for wider use of it. So before we finish this thing out, I would like to give my personal opinion on this case. I try to keep it neutral with this podcast, as to not give you a biased opinion. I try to stick to the facts to give you the best story, the best case possible. But it is known that I am someone who is spiritually inclined. I believe in the unseen world, that there are higher powers beyond our sight, and the belief of supernatural entities. Now, I won't confirm or deny whether or not I believe that Annelise was being possessed by these demons and made to see and do things that she wouldn't normally do, or whether this was just a cruel misidentification of a mental illness. But one thing I think we can agree on is the fact that a young woman's life was cut short due to mistreatment and doctors who just weren't doing their jobs. It's ridiculous, but that's my thought on the matter. The last incident with the case of Annelise Michel was on the 6th of June in 2013, when a fire broke out in the house where Annelise Michel lived. And although the local police said it was a case of arson, some locals still believe that it had something to do with the exorcism case itself. Whew! Alright, so definitely a darker case than the first one, but I hope you all enjoyed it. Lots of spooky stuff today. What do you guys think? Do you think that Annelise was really possessed by demons, or do you think that this was a misidentification of a mental illness? Whatever you believe, let me know in the comments below. If you have any ideas for future episodes, make sure to email at thevoidfrequency@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment in the podcast below. I make sure to read all of them. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Thank you so much, and stay weird, everybody.